Have you ever heard of a war where both sides claimed they won? I mean, seriously, both sides threw a victory parade. Well, that's exactly the puzzle we're diving into today. We're going all the way back to 701 BCE, to a single conflict between the massive Assyrian Empire and the tiny kingdom of Judah, and somehow they both walked away saying, "We won."
So how is that even possible? One war, two winners? It's a question that has seriously stumped historians for over a century. To get to the bottom of it, we're going to have to put on our detective hats and sift through some ancient evidence.
All right, so the case file is open on the invasion of Judah by the Assyrian king Sennacherib. And here's the thing, this wasn't some minor border dispute. It's one of the best documented events from the ancient world. We've got texts, we've got archaeology, we've got inscriptions, but all that evidence, yeah, it just makes the whole thing even more confusing.
Okay, so here's the rundown. It's 701 BCE. The big guy on the block, the Assyrian Empire, decides it's time to teach a lesson to a smaller kingdom, Judah, that's been acting up. The war happens, and this is where it gets weird. Assyria goes home and carves these monuments saying, "We crushed it!" Meanwhile, Judah writes in their holy books about a miraculous last-minute save. And here we are, almost 3,000 years later, still trying to figure out what really went down.
So, like any good detective, we've got to look at the witness statements. And our two main witnesses couldn't be more different. In one corner, you've got the official, boastful records of the Assyrian war machine, and in the other corner, the sacred scriptures of the kingdom of Judah.
And when you put their stories side by side, it's just night and day. The Assyrian account is this cold, hard list of destruction. They're like, we wrecked 46 cities, deported over 200,000 people, and made their king pay up big time. But then you flip to the biblical account, and it's a totally different movie. It talks about a divine intervention, an army just vanishing overnight, forcing the Assyrians to pack up and leave Jerusalem untouched.
This quote from the Assyrian king, Sennacherib, just says it all, doesn't it? "I shut him up like a bird in a cage." That is pure, uncut swagger. It's an image of complete and total dominance. There is zero room for interpretation there. From his point of view, he had them right where he wanted them.
But then, bam, you get this. The biblical story tells of a stunning comeback, an act of God that just wipes out the Assyrian army. So from Judah's perspective, the Assyrians didn't just pack up and go home. They were beaten. They fled. You literally cannot have two more opposite versions of the same event.
So you gotta ask, right? Who's telling the truth? I mean, somebody's gotta be lying, or at least exaggerating, right? This is the exact question that has kept historians arguing for generations. All right, so let's check out how people have tried to solve this puzzle in the past. There have been a couple of major theories over the years. So the first big idea was, hey, maybe they're talking about two different wars. Maybe the Assyrians are talking about a first successful campaign, and the Bible is talking about a second failed one later on. It sounds pretty clever, right? Solves everything. Except there's one tiny little problem. The Assyrians, who wrote down everything, never mention a second invasion. Not once. So that theory, while neat, kind of fell apart.
Okay, so theory number 2 gets a bit more academic. It's called source criticism. The idea here is that the biblical story isn't one single account, but it's actually two different stories stitched together. You've got account A, an older, more factual-sounding bit that actually mentions paying tribute to Assyria, which lines up with their story, but then you have account B, this more dramatic story of a miracle. And for a long time, a lot of scholars kind of went, yeah, account A is probably history, and account B is more like a faith lesson.
But you see the issue with both of these approaches, right? They still force you to pick a side. They basically say, okay, the Assyrian version is more or less the real history, and the miracle story is something else. We're right back where we started, asking, so who's lying?
And this is where things get really interesting. Because what if the problem isn't the evidence? What if we've been asking the wrong question this whole time? Just think about this for a second. What if both sides were telling the truth? This is the big shift in thinking. Maybe the problem isn't the ancient records. Maybe the problem is us and our modern idea that in any conflict there has to be one clear winner and one clear loser. What if that's just not how it works?
So the new approach says, let's stop asking who is right, and let's start asking a much better question. How did each side define victory? What did winning even look like to an Assyrian emperor versus a tiny kingdom fighting for its life? So let's grab a new set of tools from the field of military history.
We're going to build a little framework here to look at this war not as one single event, but as two totally different experiences happening at the same time.
So what's in this toolkit? Well, here are some of the standard ways military historians judge the outcome of a war. Did you achieve your main goals? Did you manage to capture the enemy's capital city? Did you win the very last big fight? Did you actually gain any territory? And did you make the other guy publicly admit you won? You can see how the answers to these questions might look very different depending on who you ask. Okay, so let's put our scorecard to the test. Let's start with achieve war aims. For Assyria, heck yes, they wanted to punish rebels and get paid, and they got both. Big checkmark. But for Judah, their goal was to just survive, to not be wiped off the map. And hey, their king was still on the throne and their capital was still standing, so yeah, checkmark for them too. Now look at capture the capital. For Assyria, that's a big fat no. They never took Jerusalem. But for Judah, that's a huge yes. It's everything. The holy city was saved. See what's happening? The exact same events create two totally plausible yet totally different stories of victory.
And that's the whole point. We get away from this simple who's lying game. It's not about truth versus fiction anymore. It's about two different truths. Assyria's victory was about conquest and cash. Judah's victory was about survival and faith. And both of those truths could and did exist at the same time.
You know, the famous military thinker Clausewitz once said that war is the province of uncertainty. And boy, does that hit the nail on the head here. War isn't a simple math problem. It's messy. And the truth often depends entirely on where you're standing. This ancient war is maybe the perfect example of that.
So now I want to turn it over to you. Armed with this new toolkit, thinking about what victory really means, who do you think won? It's a fascinating question, isn't it? And maybe the real takeaway here isn't about an ancient battle, but about questioning what it means to win anything at all.